Pumptober, Dumptober, Traptober, you've heard it all before. Despite all of the chaos, how funny would it be if Bitcoin ended up closing the month green? In today's video, we'll be talking about exactly this, going over the recent Bitcoin price action, how I am currently navigating this market ahead of an upcoming volatile week, and of course, taking you through some of my trades. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Right now, Bitcoin is literally only down 1.32% this October. As you can see here, this is what we're currently looking like. Now, would you be surprised if we closed green? Because every single time that we've had a green September in Bitcoin's history, we ended up closing October green. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, every single October after, we close green. Now, we covered this chart already on the channel, but I would simply not be surprised if the month closes green. Now, I also wanted to show you what is happening to Bitcoin right now. We are at 112.4K. Can we retrace? Of course, there's always a possibility, and we'll get into that in today's video. However, this is now the fourth attempt of breaking past our key confluence zone. You can see that we've been covering the fact that we're simply forming higher lows every single time. 1, 2, 3, and right now we are flirting with $112,000. Every single time recently that we tapped into this level, we ended up getting rejected. But the more and more times that you tap into a certain level, the higher the likelihood that we will break through. You can see that first and foremost, after this wick, we pumped to this level, we got rejected from the anchored VWAP, came back down below the bull market support band for Bitcoin, which is this green and red line that you can see here on the chart. Then we came back lower, set another higher low, then we got a pump again to this level, got rejected, came back down, another pump to the anchored VWAP once more, got rejected, came back down, and then we managed to hold 107.2K as support. To remind you, 107 is very, very important because it was the previous springboard that brought us to brand new all-time highs. You can see here the direction of Bitcoin after we held that level as support. We didn't even come back to tap into it, which we covered at length before. Now, we held this level of support, technically speaking, and as I'm recording this video, Bitcoin is around 112.4K. So what is next here? I personally think that this is going to be a very volatile week, shaking out both sides of the market, but ultimately, my base case is that we will be moving higher from here. The reason I say that is because not only is this the fourth attempt of this key confluence zone, and to remind you why the zone is so important, we had to surpass the value area low, we had to surpass the bull market support band, and we also need to flip 112K, which is the previous all-time high set at the beginning of the year as support. If we manage to do this, and we actually close above these levels, hold it as support, we are technically moving higher, and the next level would be around 116K. Flip 116, I've been very vocal about saying that we will likely be getting a brand new all-time high for Bitcoin. Now, where could this go wrong? Well, first and foremost, I have to show you that the liquidity is pretty split here. Over this weekend, we've been seeing people start to pile into longs, but the good news is that people are also piling into shorts. On the 48-hour time frame, it does paint pretty much the same picture. However, we just tapped into that liquidity, and so there is some liquidity down below before we potentially move higher. But if you really zoom out here and go on the 1 week time frame, for example, what do you notice? A lot of liquidity to the upside and a lot of liquidity to the downside. So how can we gauge where the market would be headed next? First and foremost, we have to understand the fact that Bitcoin dominance will likely continue to increase. This has been my base case for a while. I have been extremely vocal about this, so vocal as a matter of fact that I am still in my Bitcoin dominance long trade. The reason I say this is because the market is waiting for Bitcoin to make its next big move. If you'd like to trade Bitcoin dominance, remember you do have the second link in my description down below. It brings you directly to Bluffin, which is one of my favorite exchanges to trade crypto overall, but also they're one of the first exchanges to have implemented Bitcoin dominance trades. And if my base case is that we will likely go ahead and fill most of this upside wick for Bitcoin dominance, it's a no-brainer to go long, in my honest opinion. Of course, this is not financial advice, just sharing with you what I've been doing, But you can see that if Bitcoin goes up, Bitcoin dominance will increase. If Bitcoin goes down, Bitcoin dominance will likely continue to increase. Now, what are the benefits here? Because I know that some of you are holding a lot of altcoins. You want to see Bitcoin dominance increase because if Bitcoin leads the rest of the market, finally, near the end, that is when Bitcoin dominance will end up plummeting. If Bitcoin dominance were to absolutely drop from here and capitulate, then that would of course signal more strength from the altcoin side of things. However, that would also signal that the end is much, much closer than most people are willing to admit. So right now, you want Bitcoin to lead the rally, which is of course why I'm also in my Bitcoin long, which is currently sitting around $15,000 in profit. And if Bitcoin does manage to break above these higher levels and we can make a new all-time high, best case scenario, we end up finding our way in this region over here above 130, and this is where Bitcoin can distribute, and naturally, that is when Bitcoin dominance would drop. That's why, regardless of the direction of Bitcoin, I have been longing Bitcoin dominance. Remember, you do have that second link in my description down below if that interests you, and of course, all of my own personal trade setups with the first link in the description down below. DM me the word premium, and I would be happy to onboard you in my free premium group. Speaking of my other trades, I am long Ethereum. We entered right below $3,800, and I've been holding this trade for quite some time now, waiting for the breakout. Ultimately, I do also think that Ethereum will be making a brand new all-time high, and we're sitting with a nice $33,000 in profit on this trade. And as a hedge, I've also been shorting Ondo, which I shared in my previous video. Now, what is next here? We filled that CME gap last week. We had a little bit of a double bottom, which was ultimately very, very positive. And let me just zoom into the lower time frames to show you what I've been talking about. You can see here that on the 4-hour time frame, this is where Bitcoin made this double bottom, but we ultimately held above 107.2K. Holding it as support was pivotal. And I actually entered my long right on this wick over here, and we caught a very, very nice move to the upside in my premium group. And if you don't believe me, let me just click on the Bitcoin chart here, and it should show you exactly where I entered my position. As you can see, the green arrow here represents where I've been entering the position, and this is right around here on this wick before we ended up moving higher. Naturally, I took some profits along the way, which is also shared in my group, but the point is, Bitcoin was indeed looking bullish. Now, I'm not writing out a pullback. In fact, I've been very vocal about the fact that if Bitcoin is to pull back, I would be looking to go even more aggressively long because I still believe that we have one last leg to this bull market cycle. But we cannot forget that we have a very, very interesting week ahead. We have the Fed's interest rate decision, and we also have the Fed press conference on Wednesday of this week. And if you go down to Thursday, we also have the initial jobless claims. Very, very important data points to come out. Let's see what Jerome Powell has to say. The odds are here that they will be cutting rates by 25 basis points. That is currently the base case. And so we'll have to see how it plays out. But ultimately, this shouldn't surprise the market, and I do think that it is indeed priced in. Now, just because they go ahead and potentially cut rates, it does not mean that altcoins will just soar. As I said, my base case is that Bitcoin dominance will continue to increase, hence my current Bitcoin dominance long position. Now, I also wanted to take a look at this chart, which is the liquidity heat map. We like to cover this on the channel once more. On the 30-day time frame, it's still looking relatively healthy, in the fact that we have a lot more cumulative short liquidation leverage in the market compared to cumulative long liquidation leverage in the market. However, remember that at the beginning of the week, when everyone was freaking out, this was much, much higher. There were way more shorts in the market on our way to hopefully liquidate those shorts. That being said, now that Bitcoin is starting to trickle up, we are starting to see more and more people pile into the market. That's why I'm not quite writing off a short-term flush here. So if Bitcoin were to drop a few $1,000s to liquidate a lot of these overly leveraged longs, that would simply not surprise me because we've seen this time and time again. Liquidate the longs, send it much, much higher. Now, Bitcoin spot ETFs, you can see that on Friday, we did have another little bit of inflows here, mainly through BlackRock and of course the Fidelity ETF, not much from the other ETFs at all. And so we'll have to see if we get some more inflows in this upcoming week, but I do expect a lot of volatility here. I also wanted to cover this, which we talked about earlier in the video, 1.32% down in October. Seriously, do you remember all the mayhem? Let me just show you the Bitcoin chart. We literally had an all-time high in October, had a massive dump, and now Bitcoin is trying trying to recover and reclaim these key levels, which of course brings us to this. Now, if October closes green, I'll have to say I told you so. I'm a little bit more bullish than most, even though I'm not writing off a short-term flush here. However, time and time again, what we see with these charts is the more and more times that we go ahead and test a level, the more and more likely it is that we break above it. Keep in mind, you can never really trust a weekend pump. However, stocks are at brand new all-time highs, and if stocks continue to soar higher, I would be expecting Bitcoin to go ahead and play catch up. And of course, that is excellent for our Ethereum trade as well. Right now, this is pretty pivotal. You can see that we are at this blue line, which is the anchored VWAP. We are nearly at the top of the bull market support band. We are above the 112K previous all-time high and above the value area low. Flip this level as support and we are moving higher, targeting at the bare minimum, in my opinion, between $115,000 to $116,000. So pay attention to this level. If we start chopping around and then we get rejected, I do think there will be a shorter term flush. So you just need to be a little bit careful in terms of how you're trading. You will never catch me say, go max long, because I'm not that kind of person. You need to be careful. If more and more longs start to pile into the market, exercise a little bit of patience. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, which we've covered previously, but just to give you a reminder if you're new to the channel, I was expecting around here, $108,000, for us to tap into these liquidity levels below 107. Remember that. But what happened was we essentially just chopped around and then made that new all-time high. So with everyone expecting Bitcoin to tap into our bull market invalidation level, which was the 98K level, you can see that we held on to support here before sending us to brand new all-time highs. We're likely not going to get it, in my opinion. That is currently my base case. If we were to get it, it would be a max bid, in my opinion, but we'll have to see how the market plays out. Right now, we are looking better and better by the minute. Now, of course, I want to see what the weekly close looks like, but if we take a look at it right now, this is starting to look like a decent weekly close. Let me just remove all my drawings here and you'll see what I'm talking about. Look at this green candle. Pretty solid here. We had a wick down. We filled most of that wick, which we talked about time and time again. And now we're seeing a little bit of upside potential here. I think that Bitcoin will be tapping into probably 116K this week, and we'll have to assess what kind of price action we get there. There's a lot of influencers coming out and saying that every single pump is a trap. In my opinion, I don't think that this is the case quite yet, although there could be lower time frame flushes, as I've alluded to several times in this video. And that sums up today's quick video. If Bitcoin can reclaim $112,000, get those daily and weekly closes above that level, the bull market support band, above the value area high, and above the anchored VWAP, it is looking extremely positive for this upcoming week. Over the past couple weeks since that liquidation event, everyone got max bearish. Now, of course, we were expecting to go ahead and fill some of that wick, but it would still surprise me if Bitcoin finds its way back down to $98,000. And if we were to go there, it would be a max bid, in my opinion, because that is where the integrity lies for the rest of this bull market. Right now, though, things are looking positive. If we can close where we are today, I would be anticipating a bigger move in this upcoming week. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And as always, if you want to join my free premium group, you do have that first link in the description down below. I hope you all had a lovely weekend, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.